Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Giannetti, I want to first start by thanking you and NRDC for all the work that you all do on environmental issues, environmental justice issues. LNG exports are an environmental injustice and a climate disaster. They pollute minority and low-income communities along the Gulf Coast, which is already overburdened by pollution. We have heard directly from communities in these regions that they do not want any LNG facilities to be built in their backyards. Hilton Kelly, a resident of Port Arthur, Texas, gave this description of the impact of two nearby LNG export terminals on his community, with two more planned. Quote, "We have a disproportionate number of people here with cancer and respiratory problems. I have two grandkids who suffer from respiratory problems. 1 in 5 households has a child or elder person who uses a nebulizer for asthma. Our babies are literally suffering, and we are suffering. How much is too much for one community? No community should have to deal with this." My question to you is, can you talk through how the Department of Energy does not properly account for the impacts of LNG exports on frontline communities and how the department should evaluate these impacts in future public interest determinations?
Thank you, Congresswoman. As someone who previously lived in Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, I have seen this firsthand as a high school teacher with students who had disproportionate asthma or other respiratory illnesses. And environmental justice is not just a buzzword. It is a legal requirement and a critical element of determining whether a project is in the public interest. Unfortunately, to date, the Department of Energy does not incorporate environmental justice impacts into its assessment. And so the ability to be able to take a second, pause, and revisit those studies to make sure that the very important impacts on especially low-income and minority communities are taken into account is a critical and common sense step.
Thank you. So how is this pause on new permit approvals of the proposed LNG export terminals in line with the Biden administration's commitment to environmental justice and protections for frontline communities?
The administration's pause is a balanced approach that respects Gulf communities. All current LNG export facilities will continue to operate, and all facilities that already have their DOE authorizations will continue to operate. But by being able to take a look and evaluate on the environmental justice impacts of continually siting these facilities in the same locations over and over again, many of which are disproportionately low income and communities of color, will make sure that we are not making some of America's best pay the price of energy development.
Thank you. Now, I serve on the Environment Subcommittee, and a few weeks ago we had a hearing where Republicans opposed EPA's methane regulations for oil and gas wells. They opposed the Methane Emissions Reduction Program and the Inflation Reduction Act, and they attacked a pipeline safety program to detect and repair methane leaks. If Republicans were successful in their efforts to let the fossil fuel industry emit as much methane as they wanted, how would that make U.S. LNG exports even dirtier?
Leakage is a serious problem when it comes to evaluating the carbon footprint of natural gas. And unfortunately, leakage happens at all parts of the value chain, from upstream extraction to midstream transportation to export and eventual use. We should be doing everything that we can at this moment to make sure that we are ensuring that leaks are minimized to the maximum extent possible, because they have a serious impact on the overall carbon footprint of these types of projects.
Great. And in closing, Ms. Giannetti, thank you for being here today to testify. Is there anything, any other points or anything else you want to say as we close out the hearing?
I think it's important for us to remember what we are talking about and what we're not talking about. Again, as has been raised numerous times, the administration's pause has zero effect on all current LNG exports, regardless of what country they're going to, has zero effect on all approved LNG exports, including ones that would nearly double our LNG export capacity by 2027 and triple going into the 2030s. It only impacts far into the future LNG export potential for NFTA countries. it is important that when we're looking at facilities that will not be built until the 2030s or beyond, that we are factoring in 2024 data and 2024 science and information into those analyses. And so this pause is a common sense step to make sure that we're doing that.
Thank you. I yield back.